Today it will be a tough one. Falling under the sword and shield. Cadere sub gladium quoque scutum. This was a hard nut to crack because in the 133 manuscript there is very little said about this. In fact, we know only the name of the technique, but what is it about is not described there. This is the very first reaction to an opponent's attack that we are taught by the manuscript. And it is the reaction against halp shield, which is the most basic attack that is out there. So this should be something very basic and very easy to use, and something that will be used very often. And this technique is also referred from several places in manuscript, so it seems that it is also something important. Many plays result in this technique. So it should be basic and it should be important. We know the name, but we don't know what is it about. We know how the final position should look like. The final position after we do our falling under. It should look like this. And we also know the possible starting positions of this action. It is either prima custodia, or priest special long point, or tertia custodia. These are possible starting points from which we do our falling under, and we end in the one position that is shown in the image. The most common interpretation of this technique is the most direct one. We should start in prima custodia and we should end in a position like this, so the technique is exactly this. It is usually explained as a way to take the center line, but I have objections against this, because you are not exactly taking the center line. You surely put your sword in the center, that's true, but and you are also starting a bind, but you are weak in this bind. You have absolutely no leverage in this bind, so you cannot influence opponent's blade at all. So I would not say that I am taking a center line, because my opponent can push me to the side whenever he wants. So yes, I am in the center, but I cannot hold it. And if the halp shield is in fact a direct cut aimed on the head, which is the basic of my interpretation, then this action makes absolutely no sense, because it does not hinder opponent's blade. I cannot restrain his movements. If I do against his cut, if I do this, then I am in bind, and that's all. His cut can continue and will hit my head. So I don't like this interpretation. It does not seem like a plausible technique that should work. Sometimes this interpretation is enhanced by a step to the side. So you are not only putting your sword in the center, you are also stepping to the side, which theoretically can save you from the attack on the head, because again, theoretically, it is possible to evade opponent's cut just by stepping aside. But that's theoretically. I would say that you would need like 10 years in Shaolin Temple in order to sometimes successfully pull it off. It is certainly not a technique that you would teach to a beginner. I mean, you cannot depend just on stepping aside if you want to defend against cut that goes on your head. That is, well, the beginner cannot do it successfully. So I don't believe that this step aside makes the interpretation any more plausible. So I tried to look at the problem from different angles. First, the ending position of the technique does not necessarily have to look like this, because the images of the 133 manuscript are stylized. They are in a specific graphical style, and this style cannot exactly portray some 3D angles, some tilts of sword and shield. If you look throughout the whole manuscript, notice that you will always see a shield that is flat against the viewer, either like this or like this. And in some occasions, you can see the shield from the side when it is vertically, like this. And that's all. We never see a shield that is somehow tilted or turned like flat from the top, like this. This is not portrayed in the manuscript, even though in some place we know and we are very sure that the shield is in fact in a position like this. But it is still drawn as if it like this. That is the case of the play that I have talked about in the previous video about the defense against separation of sword and shield, where in the text there is clearly said, I believe it is from this side, it is clearly said that we should turn sword and shield like this. But the image still is showing sword and shield like this. So the final position of falling under can have shield and sword tilted somehow in 3D differently than what it looks like in the image. Now, what are the possible starting points of falling under? It is prima custodia, which has sword on my left side. It can be priest special long point, which again has sword on my left side. And it can be tertia custodia, which has again sword on my left side. So I would say that this action should involve like a cut or at least move a sword from my left side to the right. And this led me to a conclusion that the falling under is in fact technique that looks like this. What I am doing is that I am throwing forward my sword together with my shield. And I am maybe trying to do a bit of a beating action with my sword against opponent's sword. And if not, at least I want to stop his blade with my blade. And I am adding the shield in a sort of a cross to it. So what I am doing is that I am throwing both hands with both weapons forward to stop anything that is coming at me. And this looks to me like a plausible defensive action. What I am doing is that I am throwing both sword and shield forward. I am making sort of a cross, so if one weapon misses or the opponent's blade slides from my blade, I will still catch it with my shield. And generally, I can catch many things here. Because, well, a lot of things can happen in the situation like this. But it will still slide from my hand to my shield, and I will still stop it. Any cut that goes from up to bottom, I will be able to stop. You can also notice that the final situation that I end in is not so different from what the image portrays. The image looks like this, and my final situation looks like this. There is a very little difference between them, and the difference is in some 3D tilting of sword and shield, which we already know that the style of the images cannot portray. So I believe that my ending position is correct according to 133, and it makes much more sense in combat. So this, I believe, is a plausible interpretation of falling under, and it is also working interpretation of falling under. It really does what it should do, and it really looks like a type of defense that you would teach to absolute beginner. Like, if anything goes at your head, just throw everything out there and it will block. It seems plausible to me, and well, in fact, I quite like this interpretation. But now, the hardest part. Why is it called falling under the sword and shield? Because I have already devised several possible interpretations of this technique, and all of them had some plausible combat explanation, but none of them could be easily mapped to this term. I mean, none of my interpretations could be called falling under the sword and shield. And in fact, it is not that strange, because if you look at the final position, or that is shown, that is drawn in the manuscript, you can see that my blade is not under opponent's sword and shield. Certainly not. I am above his sword and somewhere to the side from his shield. In some images I am above his shield, clearly above his shield. So if I want to stay true to the image, I cannot end somehow under opponent's sword and shield. So it is kind of strange. Why would it be called falling under the sword and shield if I cannot end below the sword and shield? It is even stranger if you look at the Latin phrase, which is cadere sub gladium quoque scutum. Quoque doesn't mean and, in effect means more like also. So you should fall under both the sword and also the shield. So the shield is, there is an emphasis on the shield. Don't fall only under the sword. Make sure that you fall under both sword and shield. So you should fall under both, but it is not in the image. Kind of strange. Well, this gave me some headache, but I believe I've got a solution. What I believe now, and what makes sense to me, is that the sword and shield that you are falling under are not opponent's sword and shield. They are your own sword and shield. What you are doing is that you are throwing both sword and shield forward, and you are lowering, so that you hide behind the sword and shield, and both of these weapons cover you. So that could be, the falling part can be about stepping back. It can also be about lowering the center of gravity so that you can hide easier behind your weapons. And when doing this, you are hiding below your own sword and shield. From the point of view of opponent, you are below it, because you are being covered by both your weapons. So I believe that the sword and shield that you are falling under are your own sword and shield, and that under means that you are covering under both sword and shield. And this explanation makes a lot of sense. In fact, to me it makes more sense than looking for falling under opponent's sword and shield, because I could not find any way how to do it. So this is my interpretation of falling under, like one of the core mechanics of the 133. And well, we'll continue with some other next time.